Welcome, everyone. Today, our guest is Elena. She is a certified health coach and life coach. She helps women who want to lose weight and or create a healthy lifestyle to do it in a realistic and sustainable way. She helps women develop habits and routines in the areas of nutrition, mindset, and movement that work for them, while helping them feel more empowered, confident, and in control in both health and life. Welcome, Elena. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Yes, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, and of course, starting with our number one question, what is your definition of a balanced life?
That's such a good question, such a big question. I feel like for me, it's finding time to work in all of the things that you find
Mm,
important in your life in like the right quantities for you, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of the
mm-hmm,
times, like we think of balance as like 50-50. And my perception of it is that it doesn't have to be. It's like the quantities that work for you. Like if I think of balanced meals or like work-life balance, I think it's like identifying first like what you want that to look like and then making it happen.
mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is such a big question. And one of the reasons why I do ask it is because everyone has their own version. They have their own version of
Mm-hmm.
balance. They have their own definition. Have their own values. And I like being able to show the different ways people balance their own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think for me, like the longest time, I did really think it had to be like the perfect way or like the set way that
Hmm.
maybe I heard someone else talk about or, read something on. But I think after we're willing to be more flexible with it and like decide what that like perfect way is for us, it's
Yeah.
so much easier to create and also maintain. It's
Hmm.
kind of what I found in my own
Yeah.
experience and that with clients too. So,
Hmm. Absolutely. Because we all have different needs, whether our life or our needs are similar to other people. If we're trying to make our picture of a balanced life fit the way someone else's, we're always going to come to some kind of, how do you say, like barrier because that's not working for us, but we're just trying to make it fit because we're quote unquote so like them.
exactly. Yeah, 100%. And like, we don't think like them. So it's like, I always say
Mm-hmm.
too, when people are trying to like, create a new habit or lose weight or whatever it is, like you can go online and you can download someone else's plan. You can follow them for a week and like
Mm-hmm.
try to do what they do. But it's likely going to feel so hard because like you said, we are not that person. We don't think like that person. So we have to develop our own like habits and identity to reach our own goals.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And this often comes up. I mean, the comparison stuff comes up with everyone, but I especially see it really coming up when it comes to moms and when we're looking on social media at the way other people are living their life or the way that people are showing up in social media. It can be really hard to look at someone's life and think, why can't my life be that way? Or why can't I be that organized? Or why can't I have these things look so pristine? When the reality is we don't even know if that's their reality for one, and they may have extra help, or they may just have different needs and wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I found myself in that place for so long. And even still, like I'll
Mm,
definitely have those thoughts come in. And what I heard once, I don't remember where it was, is to use like those moments as like inspiration. Like I don't know
mm,
why my mind goes to this time I was at my sister's house and she had just decorated and her house looked so nice. And my house, like
mm,
we don't typically spend time on like decorating. Like we
yeah.
actually moved into a new house and we have done that, but that's the first time. Like before, people used to come into my home,
Mm.
like it didn't matter when, and they would say, "Did you just move in?" Because we just never like actually did that. And I
Yeah.
remember one time being in my sister's house and it looked so nice. She had just decorated and all that, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, why can't my house look like this?" Like just like you said. And I remember then
Hmm.
thinking there because I had heard that it can. Like I remember thinking to myself, it can. If I literally wanted to go
Yeah.
home and put the work in and do whatever it took to get there, it could. It's not that it can't. It's just that for me, right then, it clearly wasn't a priority. So like that like kind of
Uh-huh.
shift there was really helpful for me, like in all areas. And also looking at it as inspiration. Like if
Mm,
she can do it, I can do it. Like there's no reason I can't.
yeah.
I just haven't yet. So that for me has been really helpful.
I love that. Yes. Use it as inspiration because it's true. And what you just said, before you recognize that that was something that you wanted, you hadn't made it a priority. It may be
Mm-hmm.
sure in the back of your mind, like, oh, yes, I would love to decorate the house. But until you were in someone else's, in your sister's home and thought, oh, this looks so nice. This feels so great. I want something like this too. Instead of, allowing jealousy or any of those emotions overtake you, you thought, I could do this too. I just need to
Yeah.
prioritize it.
Yeah. Same thing with like if you're scrolling on Instagram, and even me, I see like all
Mhm.
the influencers with like the abs eating all the food. And I'm like, why can't
Yeah.
I do that? And it's like, wait, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, either eat all those things that I know aren't going to leave me feeling good, or like I don't want to eliminate, my wine trips or whatever it is. Like it's the same exact thing, and it helps me with that too. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And, segueing into part of the reason why I brought you on here today was to talk on the topic of trying to make a health style or a healthy lifestyle work for us as moms. Because
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes I hear, well, I can't do it. I don't have the time. I I'm just so exhausted, or I can't cook, or I don't know how to cook those things. How can moms start incorporating smaller steps to make something work for them?
Yeah, so that's also like such a big question. But I think what it starts off with is kind of what we touched on a little bit earlier, is like we have to figure out, one, what we want. Like, what is our goal? What are we trying
Mm,
to work towards, and get super, super clear on that? Because a lot of
mhm.
times, like we have this just kind of vague idea. So it's a lot harder for us to then put the steps in place to get there. So that's where when I work with a client, or even if I'm just talking to a family or friend, I'm always like, but what is your goal? Like, what do you actually want out of life, out of health? And getting really
Yeah.
specific there. And so, like, for a lot of people, it's like, I want to lose 10 pounds, I want my clothes to fit better, whatever it is. But I also want them to think about what is like kind of your vision for your life when it comes to health. And like, I always
Mhm.
give the example, like, for me, it's I want to feel my best every day. I want to wake up every day. I know my clothes are going to fit. Like, so it just gives you that really like crystal clear picture of what you're working towards. And the reason I say it's so important to start with that is because when you come up against all of those life obstacles in the day to day, because no matter what, whether we're a mom, whether we're not, we're going to. Those challenges are going to come no matter what. But when you can reflect on like that vision that you created in the very beginning, it's going
Mhm.
to be so much easier to carry through, regardless of how busy you are. So that's like the first
Yeah.
thing I always start with people. And then like the second piece is like kind of fits into the first, but like, why truly do you really want it? And like, we have to drill down
Mhm.
really deep there to the point where when you say it, that you're like, oh, that really resonates with me. Like, I want to get up right
Yeah.
now and go exercise. They're like, I want to get up right now and do something to work towards it. So like that takes work sometimes. Like people, I always come to me and they'll say like, well, I want to be healthy for my kids, or like my doctor said I need to do this. And I'm like, when you say that, how do you feel? And they're like, oh, I don't know,
Yeah.
not great. And I'm like, okay, well, that's like the fuel that is either going to push you forward or not. So it doesn't sound like that that's really going to be
Mhm.
it. So we got to like dig a little deeper and figure out what it is. Mine really just goes back to that vision I shared. And in the day to day, I can ask myself, with all the choices that I go to make, like, is this going to help me feel my best? Like, then you can compare it against
Mm,
your goal and your why. And that helps push you forward no matter what. So I think at the foundational
yeah.
level, like that's where you really have to start. And then the third thing that I'd say before we get into like the specifics, I think is like we have to evaluate our priorities. And this is a really hard one for moms, a lot of those that I
Yes.
talk to, because we always want to put our kids and our family first. And the thing is,
Mhm.
if we do that, they're all our kids and our family are always going to come first when it comes to our plans for the week or our health. That's totally
Yep.
fine. But I think it's really important to acknowledge that going into it. And I actually push that back on that a little bit. And I encourage moms that I work with to put themselves first. Because if we do not, and if
Mhm.
we are literally not carving out that time, whether it's 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour, whatever it is, each
Mhm.
day or whatever your quantity looks like, you are not going to be able to show up in the best way for you and for everyone else. And you're not going to feel
Yeah.
your best doing it either. So I think that is such a key piece, because like you had said before,
Mhm.
otherwise it's like everyone's like, well, I had these plans and then this person had soccer and I had to do this and then there was this concert. And I'm like,
Yes.
wait, but if you had
Mhm.
decided if we decide our priorities, when all those things come up and there's four of them that are literally at the same time your workout every day or whatever it is, you can say, actually, I'm only going to go to two of those this week because my priority is to get this done for me. And I know then I show up at my best. So I think that is so key to identify first, because then when you get in it, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. I knew this was going to happen. And I kind of have this plan in place. So I think then getting into the, specifics of it is, it's going to be different for everyone, but picking a few small things that you want to get started with. So, if it's, and usually people know what they want to do. Like usually people say, you know what, I feel really good when I'm eating this way. I've done it before. It's just hard to stick with, or something like that. So then we want to go right there. We want to zoom in on that and figure out, all right, what are those challenges you're facing around that specific thing? Well, it's hard to cook, or I don't know where to find the recipes, or I can't find the time. And, as a coach, that's where I'm like, I work with them to like, let's find solutions for every single one of those things, every single one. Now, if someone else listening to this, you can do that on your own too, like, so say it's, you had said something before, I don't have the time, I think is what you said. So it's like, all right, let's really dissect what you mean by that. So like, okay, you want to cook like these 5 meals and you're saying you don't have the time. What does that actually mean? Like you get home at 7 and, like, what does that look like? Because we can't solve for it if we don't know what the problem actually is. And I find when I start digging into those conversations with people, typically we find that time isn't really the issue most of the time. It's that, well, it just feels hard. Take us easier. And well, my kid's eating chicken nuggets, and I really want chicken nuggets. It's like we figure out that there's always a way to make it work, always. And we usually figure out that the problem isn't the problem. So that's kind of like where you have to start. I have a lot of tangible tips and steps that can be helpful, but I think it is always going to go back to what is it that you're working towards and what are you struggling with to identify which one of those is going to be the one you need, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Because you have to start wherever your goal is.
Yeah.
And wherever the reason why you want that goal is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, because I mean, something that I always encourage too, if it's going back to the time thing, like I'm big into mindset, like, and you had mentioned that in my bio, like yes, it's about the nutrition and it's huge about the exercise, but if we're not thinking in a way that's going to help us actually do those things, it does not matter how good your workout routine is or how good your meal plan is. So something when it comes to time that I always like listen for when I'm working with people, and you can do this on your own too, is how are you literally thinking about and talking about the time that you have? Most of us are walking around like, I don't have any time. I just don't have time for this. I'm so busy. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get home at 8 o'clock. I'm not going to have time to. That's literally the pattern that we're playing in our head, the story that we're playing. And when we do that, we feel horrible. We feel anxious. We feel like we're always behind, frustrated, all the things. And feelings drive our actions. So we're likely not going to be taking the actions that we actually want. So that's like a great place to start, is start listening to that chatter, that buzz, that story you have about whatever your struggle is. Because if it's really negative, which most of ours are, we got to clean that up before we're going to go anywhere. Otherwise, we're just going down that same path that we've been on. Yeah.
And just as an example, yesterday I caught myself there doing that exact same thing, except it was, I remember I was walking in the kitchen into the pantry and I yawned. I was like, oh, I'm so tired. And then I caught it. I was like, wait, yes, that might be true, but it's more that I have low energy and there's something I can do about that. I shifted it to something that I had some control over. I'm low energy.
Exactly.
What can I do? Versus I feel like when you think I'm so tired, it's more of, well, there's nothing you can do about that. You're just tired. You can't take a nap because you're going to feel worse. Versus low energy, I feel gave me something to do about it. I could maybe do a stretching. I could take a walk. I could eat a snack that's going to re-energize me. I could drink some tea. There were so many options when I flipped it.
Exactly. And I love you kind of said this, but always focusing on when you get to that point when you have a thought and like then sometimes we'll go to like, yeah, I'm so tired because I have to do everything around here. Like I heard somebody call them like negative thought magnets. Like once you have one, they're like all coming to the party.
Yes.
A good way to get yourself out of that is to go where you kind of went, like, what can I do? What can I control? Always. Because there's always something that we can do and we can control, whether it comes to something like that or when it comes to like feeling like you have no time again. All right, but what time do I have and what can I do with the time I have? Those are like the two questions I always ask myself, and like always encourage people to think like, okay, great. Like my kid has activities till 8. Okay, but what can I do? Can I pack something? Can I make something the night before? Can I just make double dinners the night before? Like, and that's one of my tips that I do and always encourage people to do is like when you're cooking dinner on Tuesday, make double, so you make double, make triple, so you have Wednesday, so you have Thursday if you're not going to be home. Like instead of, I know a lot of people will do like 5 hours of meal prep on, or not 5 hours, I don't know how many they do because I don't do that on like a Sunday.
It's a long time.
And if that works for you,
Yeah.
amazing. Like 1 hour, 2 hours, whatever it is. But I have never been someone who has spent like an entire day in my kitchen meal prepping. I could, but I don't really prefer to. So what I do instead is just cook double of everything, and then I repurpose it creatively like throughout the week. So you're not really doing any extra work. You're just cooking the same thing times 2. Maybe you're putting like, say you're cooking a sheet of chicken, like in the broiling it or whatever in the oven. Then maybe the second one, you're putting on completely different seasonings and like putting some like, I don't know, onion or lemon on top. So it's different if that's something you prefer. But that's like one thing that I always do. I always cook extra vegetables so that my dinner turns into my lunch the next day. And sometimes I'll put it even under eggs as like a breakfast. So again, if you're using that same amount of time, but you're getting three different meals out of it. So that's again, just shifting that way of thinking is the only way I ever got there though. It's like, okay, but what could I do here?
Yeah.
Wow, that. So
yes. And that brings me to the quote that I saw on your website. It was, what we think about, we bring about. And I've heard different variations of this, but I really like that one because it rhymes.
Yeah.
What we think about, we bring about. And it's so true. What we focus on is what we're going to continue seeing because that's what we're focusing on. Because our brain only can hold in so much information. So if it knows we want to focus on this, it's going to sift and sort out everything else and only bring us those things to our attention.
Exactly. Yeah. Our brain looks for, another quote is, our brain looks for evidence of what we believe to be true, which is exactly that. You set out to, if you're convincing yourself that you have no time and you cannot make it work, you are literally only going to see evidence all day long of how you cannot make it work and continue to, like that self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to continue just to go down that same exact spiral. So all we have to do is break it. Decide that we're going to break that. Like you said, you catch yourself in that thought. That is the very first step. And then it's just acknowledge it. We don't want to fight it that we have it, because that's fine. Our brain gave it to us. Okay, cool. But it's like, now what do I want to think? Now what? It's really like the starting point.
Yeah. And if you do look at your calendar and you see, but I really don't have the time, is there a way to make time? Right? Are you looking at your calendar? Is there a way to make time? Are you actually using that time as it's intended on your calendar? Or do you find yourself doing other things that is wasting more of your time? I would get caught in like scrolling through social media, or, oh, just one more show, just one more, and then I'll get back to work. And I would find that would eat up so much of my time, especially the scrolling, because you don't even realize like how long. Even if it's just 15 minutes, 15-minute increments adds up so quickly. And that's where your time is going. If you actually if you just set out to track your week, hour by hour as much as possible, right? You will be surprised of where your time is actually going.
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's where, like, because you said, 15 minutes. Yeah, but 2 15-minute little scrolls is a workout. Like, that's so, 2 15-minute scrolls is taking 30 minutes to plan your meals for the week. You probably don't even need that much, honestly. And I don't really even do a whole lot of meal planning. And there's a way that I have a guide that I'll share that kind of breaks down what I actually do for my meal planning, or lack of. But yeah, so that it sounds like nothing, and I actually just recently made a conscious effort to stop like scrolling so much throughout the day. And I am amazed at how much additional time I have. Even if, say, you catch yourself doing it like 5 times for 5 minutes, if you literally, this is what I actually did when it was a little bit warmer. Now it's getting a little bit cold, so it depends on the day. If you literally decided to go for a 5-minute walk every time, that's 25 minutes of walking you just step back in your day. And guess what? If you really wanted to, you could scroll and walk. I don't encourage it. Don't. But you could. You could do it. So yes, I think that's exactly it. Like looking at where you're spending your time is huge. And that's where it goes back to what I said earlier about priorities, because then we want to compare that to our priorities. Most of us don't even think about how we want our week to look, how we want our day and our time to look. But then if you do go and do like some type of time audit and you look through it, I have never heard anyone say, oh yeah, I knew exactly where I was spending my time and I don't have one extra second. I've never heard anybody say that if they actually do it. So something that's really been really helpful for me is kind of goes back to like that vision I said in the beginning, but like it's more something I've been working on for my business, but I originally did it for my health. And like coming up with like a phrase of like who I want to be. So it's like for me, I want to be the healthiest and like best version of myself. Every day I want to do more things that are getting me to be that. And like right now I have something that's like, you know, about being super successful like business owner, like as I get to my place where I want to be. And it's like during the day when I catch myself doing any of those things, first we have to decide we want to have that intentional awareness. And then the second thing is, say I'm scrolling, I ask myself, would the most successful version of me be doing this? Would a millionaire business owner be doing this? Heck no, like absolutely not. They would not be sitting here, not even looking at what I'm scrolling through anymore, because I'm just like, don't want to do the thing. So I'm scrolling. No, they wouldn't. And you can do the same thing with your health. Like whatever it is for you, like would the healthiest version of me be doing this right now? And you get like an immediate answer. Like they absolutely wouldn't be having a third piece of pizza or a sixth cookie. Like they'd be like, no, I don't even want that. So that's so helpful for me, is like kind of putting myself in that position of the future me and like making my choices from that place with that specific sentence or question.
And it can make your choices happen so much easier if you're just thinking about making the choices from the person you want to become. Because when you're doing that, it's not even a thought. You already know this person does this. This person wakes up and does their workout first thing in the morning because they know their kids have soccer and everything else in the evening, and their workout will be always pushed.
Exactly. Yeah. And like the more you can make those choices now, the quicker you're going to get there and the better you're going to feel too. And that sometimes can help too, because sometimes I'll hear from people that say, well, I'm not seeing results. When I don't see results right away, I want to give up. And it's like, yeah, but if your end goal is to become the healthiest version of you, it's not only about the results, it's about 10 other things. And you're still going to do that workout, even if you don't have abs on Tuesday when you start on Monday, because you're working towards health. You're not only working towards a number and towards a physical result. So that's, it can help in so many ways, which is why we start out with it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. We actually just had my husband and I had a conversation about this last night, because he works out in the evening, not evening, after work. He gets off work at 3. So he works out after work, and I prefer to work out in the morning just because I know things always come up. Well, there was things in the morning that were going on. So I was like, okay, I'll shift my workouts this week to the afternoons. Once I'm done, I'll go and work out. And of course, something came up. We have a ranch and we have goats there. Well, the goats got out. They got out onto the neighbor's property. So he had to go and figure out how to get them. We'll find them first and then get them back to the ranch. Well, he is also like, he thrives on routine. He wants things a certain way in terms of, this is when I work out and I don't like to skip a workout. And he comes back and he goes, that was such a great time. I really enjoyed being able to just do that because I could. And one of the things he also said was, I almost didn't go because of my workout, but then I realized this is a lifestyle shift.
Yeah.
One day doesn't mean I'm starting over. One day just means one day out of my whole lifetime. That's not going to throw me off. But we oftentimes get stuck on the one day, oh, well, I couldn't make it that day. And so we feel like we have to start over, when that starting over is just like this vicious cycle that we've created for ourselves. When we can just keep going, we do it again the next day.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it. And like, I always say, like, move things, don't remove things, which is exactly that. So, okay, he didn't get his workout on Thursday, but so it's going to Friday, you know, like it's not a big deal. And that's like one of my kind of tips that I say is like, stop striving for perfection and like focus. Well, we hear this all the time, like progress over perfection, but like putting it in kind of like that tangible way of, okay, so 5 days, my goal of 5 days of working out 1 week didn't happen, and it happened 4, but I did 4, like let go of that idea of like, it has to be all or nothing, or that it has to be perfect, because that is where so many of us get stuck, and it keeps us from getting where we want to go. So I love that. That is exactly it. It is a lifestyle. It's about what we do every day, not just one day. That's it.
Yeah. And exercise and healthy living is not just about our physical health, it's also about our mental health. And for him, if he would have gone to the gym like his normal routine calls for, he would have been just so anxious about where the goats were. Was he going to lose them? Was he going to be able to find them if he went a different day? So in reality, he did what was best for him in that moment. No, he didn't work out, but he went and did something that was going to be better for his mental health in that moment.
Yeah. And I think where we get in trouble, or some of us do, is like, okay, so that happens. So he makes that choice to go take care of the goats. For most of us, it's probably not the goats, but it's anything else, probably the kids. Yeah. And then we have that thought right after, that's something like, well, I blew it now, or, well, I should just start over in January. And it's in that exact moment that when we hear that thought, and the first step is starting to pay attention to those thoughts, is to shift it. To think about it and decide and think, like, is this really what I want? Like, does that resonate with my vision and what I want? No. So you just change, you have to work on changing it in that moment. And that is how we start, again, breaking that cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think too, like if we find ourselves in like more of those situations, then like there's always going to be what's the word, exceptions, like for example your situation, like with the goats, like but if every single day you start noticing that something is getting in the way of your routine, then I feel like that's a time, like say for a week straight, it's like, oh, this happened and this happened and this happened. It's like, I feel like that's been a time that you really have to step back and evaluate all of it again, because it's like, are my priorities still the same? Am I really trying to fit, something in a spot that just, it's not where it's not going to work? And then again, back to those questions, what can I do to make this work in the best way for like me and my family, so it does feel better overall too? Because I think sometimes we really do have to be honest with ourselves. If it's like an everyday thing, after a while it's like, okay, wait, what's happening here? Like, am I just deciding not to do it? Are these things really exceptions? Like, what is it?
One thing that I also often hear is people complain, or will have a complaint about the food that they're eating in terms of living a healthy lifestyle. Like they have this vision that eating healthy is eating bland, when that's not the case. And I was looking at your blog and you have some, oh my gosh, delicious looking recipes on your website. I think one was the broiled salmon, and it was like the best salmon you'll ever have. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to cook that. And it just made my mouth water. Yeah.
And that's, again, like I would have never found those recipes if I was stuck in eating healthy is boring. And like I grew up in the 90s where eating healthy was kind of bland and boring. Like where we ate, the little 100-calorie pack of like what those were. And like that is, I love that you said that, because it's so not the case. And I get so excited when I make a recipe at home that is with all just like whole food, real ingredients, and it's better than when I get out. And that happens all the time, because I can control what I put on it, how I season it. And salmon is such a great example. I don't even order salmon out anymore, because we make it so good at home. We have a few different variations, and it's like, yes, you can make food. And sometimes I hate even saying the word healthy, because I feel like we just get this idea of bland and boring in our head. But it's more like it's food that fuels you. I heard the other day, like food that loves you back. And that's what it is.
Oh, I love that.
You eat it, and it's so good.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it was, I'm probably going to say the wrong person. I think it's Dr. Daniel Amen. I'm not sure exactly if that's the right name. But he does a lot of studying on the brain, and like how your brain, like obviously affects everything else, like your health and everything. And he was saying like, yeah, and a big piece is the way you eat. And he was saying like, go for food that loves you back. So like thinking it, I think in those terms, maybe if you have that like relation in your head, healthy is awful, you can start looking at it in a different way, because then you'll be more open to it. But oh my gosh, yes. I cook like chicken wings and steak and salmon and all sorts of bowls and salads. If you don't eat meat, totally fine. There's a million options for that too. And yes, you can make really good food that also loves you back, fuels you, and just you feel really good after eating it, gives you energy, reduces inflammation, all the things. So it's really a win-win. I look at it. It's just a practice. It's getting in the habit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And getting in the habit too of looking outside the protein or the food itself. Because I think a lot of people get stuck on, oh, but I'm eating this over and over again. But you can recreate those things with seasonings or sauces or dressings. There's so many ways to transform a single protein so that you can make it different. Like you said earlier, make it into different meals throughout your week. But do yourself a favor, save yourself some time, and just you can batch cook some of these things.
Yeah. And I also will offer too that I like to say is, if we can get good at something being boring, we can do it no matter what. So it's like in the beginning, it's okay to let it be a little boring. And like, if you think about like brushing your teeth, we don't wake up and say, I did this yesterday. This toothpaste is so boring. No, we do it because it's like, we want the end goal. So like in the beginning, I think that's totally fine. If you're like, no, you know what, I want for 30 days, I want to do this. And then like, I don't mean like, and then at the end of 30 days you're done, but I mean like, say you want to set a time for yourself just to like go through it. I think it's totally fine. Say maybe you do give yourself your set meal plan and you stick with it, because the thing is, the focus is on building that skill, the consistency, and like maintaining the momentum. So it's like, yes, we can change it up, change all the varieties up. And that's what I do talk about a lot. I recipes and things like that. However, then when we get to the day where it's 8 o'clock and we just got home and we don't have a fun salmon recipe, it's another reason that we'll give ourselves to throw it all out the window. So I do say, like, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. It's okay if sometimes it feels a little boring. We can get pleasure and excitement from other areas of our life than food. And like, I think sometimes we forget that too. Like, I love food. I love to go out to eat. However, I think, again, it goes back to that balance. Like, if we keep it simple and don't overcomplicate it some of the time, then we have a couple of days where we have time and we're like, you know what, I'm going to cook something fun today. That's a great time to do it. I feel like if we think every single night we need a gourmet, perfect, amazing meal, then sometimes we can be setting ourselves up for failure versus success.
And that's where we had found ourselves. We hated having to like cut up the chicken and stand at the stove top as we cooked it. So then we found that air frying for us was so much easier because we could just throw it in there and forget about it and do other things during that time that we would rather be doing than standing at the kitchen stove.
Yeah, exactly. Like experimenting, find different ways that work for you, for sure. Yeah, I think that's great. I love it.
Yeah. Or, I mean, also doing just different veggies too and throwing that in, because that can change your meal as well.
Yes, 100%. Like changing up. So for me, the way I look at it and teach it typically is like following a general meal template. So it's like, usually it's like half your plate is like some type of green vegetable, like cruciferous vegetable, any type. And you can change those up as much as you want. A quarter of your plate, usually-ish, I encourage it to be like a clean protein source of some kind, whatever it is you eat and you like. So that can be chicken, salmon, beef, ground turkey, eggs, tofu, whatever it is that you eat and your body does well with. And then the other quarter of the plate is like a starch. So sweet potatoes, regular potatoes. If you do well with like unprocessed whole grains, like anything that is actually going to give you that starch. I have a full like macronutrient breakdown on my website too. So if anybody's like, I don't know what you're talking about, you can literally like get this template and the breakdown of it. So that's where I love following that, because it gives you that opportunity to literally like mix and match and play around with that in millions of different ways, probably. Like you can do it by making a smoothie with that stuff. It's not going to be a sweet potato, broccoli and chicken. You're not going to make a smoothie on that. But you can put in other things that are going to fit that exact template. You can make 10 different smoothies with that template. Then for lunch, you can do the exact same thing, with some of your leftovers or whatever you decide to do for lunch, and same with dinner. So yeah, changing up the veggies. The other really easy way to do it is, again, like changing up your healthy fat or your seasonings. That's what I forgot to mention, the healthy fat, always too, like 2 tablespoons or so with every meal. So you can make like a fun sauce and make one that you use for the entire week that sits in your fridge. Olive oil, like olive oil and seasoning can make things taste really good. Like I feel like
Oh yeah.
some people are so afraid of fat and salt, and I'm like, no, just don't overdo it. That's it. Like we just
Yeah.
don't overdo it. So yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
the template gives you a lot of flexibility and a way to make it work anywhere. Like I've eaten truly, this sounds crazy, but at a gas station, at a fast food place, and the airport, simply following like a general template. I'm like, okay, I need my protein, I need some sort of fruit or vegetables, and I need healthy fats. Three things that I can grab real quick anywhere, and I'm good to go. So
Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
that is the key. It's creating something that is so flexible, you can do it anywhere.
yeah, exactly. And then also going back to like what we talked about before, managing your mind around it too. When you start hearing those
Mm-hmm.
thoughts creep in that are like, no, I'm on vacation, or no, I'm at the airport. Like, I don't have to do this. It's like, no, we don't have to, but we want to. So I think that's
Yeah.
the other side of it, is like the actual tactical stuff of what we need to do to literally reach our health goals or lose weight. But then also the other side is like the mind management to get you to do it.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where that choose the food that loves you back can really come in, because yes, you're on vacation, but how are you going to, like, are you going to feel good
Yeah.
about, not about yourself, but is your body going to be physically feeling well the next day after
Mm-hmm.
you've just like thrown a bunch of stuff that you don't normally eat into it? And that's not to
Yeah.
say you can't enjoy certain things ever again. It's just being conscious of what you're putting in your body and how it makes you feel.
Yep. And how much too. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
one night you're deciding that you literally are eating something that isn't, doesn't have the different elements that you're like, no, this sounds amazing. I'm going to have it. But how much of it do you want to have thinking about how you're going to feel an hour later and the next
Mm-hmm.
morning? Yes. That's so true. I love that. A couple of years ago, I decided to, because before that point, anytime I went on vacation, anytime I went to visit family, it was like all bets were off. Like when I get there, the point come home, I do
Yeah.
whatever I want, ate everything and as much as I wanted, actually probably more than several years ago. But and then we went on a vacation. Like I remember the first one very distinctly, that I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to keep most of my healthy habits during this trip. And I'm just going to sprinkle in, like you had said, like I'm going out to dinner. I'm going to pick a couple of things that maybe aren't like necessarily exactly the food that fuels me or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, but I'm going to mix it in. And that trip, I felt so much better the entire time. And when I got back, and
Mm,
like mentally, physically, and emotionally, of course, because if you eat something,
yeah.
your stomach hurts, you're full, you're uncomfortable. And it's like, especially if you're on like a beach vacation, not only about like how I look,
Yeah.
but like, oh, I don't want to put on like, a bathing suit and a cover up if I'm like feeling horrible. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah. If
and
you're feeling all bloated and or
yeah,
have heartburn after because you ate
uh,
some red sauce that didn't sit well with you.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
think it's sometimes too questioning. Like we say, well, I want to enjoy it. And it's like sometimes questioning, are we really enjoying the things that we say
Mm-hmm.
we are?
Yes.
Like, do we
Yep.
really enjoy 6 glasses of wine? I don't know. I think we
Mm-hmm.
enjoy one or two, maybe. When it gets to six,
Yeah.
that's really questionable. So I think it's like
Yeah.
questioning that piece of it too for ourselves, and like being a little bit like
Mm-hmm.
on to our brain that's feeding us these things that aren't always true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even recognizing, why am I choosing this over something else? So sometimes I will remember things that taste good from childhood. I'm like, ooh, that sounds really good, let me get one. And so one day, it was one night, I don't know what we were doing, my husband and I went through the McDonald's drive-through and I was like, ooh, a McFlurry sounds so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I took like two bites and I'm like, ooh, this is not how I remembered. I'm gonna stop
Yeah.
eating this because this is not good. This is not what
Mm-hmm.
I wanted. And it was just having that in mind. I didn't have to keep eating it just because I bought
Yeah.
it. My husband always says, I've never met a sweet I didn't like, so he can eat it or whatever. But sometimes we're thinking something's going to taste so good and like we keep eating because we're waiting for it to taste so good. But if you eat something and it's not tasting good to you, you don't have to keep eating it. Go and
Yeah.
choose something else. Like,
Yeah.
no, McFlurries don't sit well with me. That was a childhood thing because as
Mm-hmm.
children, we like blander things.
Yeah.
I
I
like things to be flavorful and taste good. If I'm going to eat something, I want it to taste good.
100%. I have this like mindful eating tip that's love it or leave it. And it's exactly what you said.
Mm,
And I like to bring that up a lot around the holidays, because I like Christmas, I love cookies. And like when I go to holiday parties, there's always so many desserts. And like I used to like fill a plate full of them and just eat them because they're sweets, it's desserts, it's holidays, I can do that. Well, no, because if they're not tasting good, they're not going to leave me feeling good, obviously, because it's just full of sugar and white flour. Why are we truly eating it? Like if you actually ask yourself that question, like you had said, it doesn't taste good and it's not going to leave me feeling good. There is literally no reason to continue eating it other than it's comfortable. You're sitting there and it's going in your mouth and you have to like break, stop doing that. So yes,
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that comes from a place too of like loving yourself and like valuing yourself enough that you care to do that and you're okay like setting that boundary and also like having those standards too. I've heard that same thing like, oh well, it's okay, like it's fine, it's a fine cookie, and I'm like, but do we need a fine cookie? Like, I don't know, maybe you do, but for me, like I want it to be the best if it's going to be something.
Yes.
So yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I want to fully enjoy that cookie, like a salted chocolate chip cookie. Like that's what I want, not just a regular bland chocolate chip cookie.
Exactly. And I like equate it to anything else. Like if you're going shopping, like clothes shopping, you're not going to go and spend $50 on a shirt that's like okay, like, well, I might wear it. No, you would never do that because it's literally like you're seeing money go out. And it's like the same thing. Like, question, is it worth it for like all the reasons, not just because you're sitting there and it's in your hands. So
yeah, we are starting to run a little bit low on time, but I wanted to also talk about in terms of choosing routines and workouts that work for you. And so, for example, for me, I absolutely hate cardio. I don't like it. I've never been able to commit to it, but I love doing weight training. So that's what I do. That's my workout routine. I'll do like 5 minutes of cardio on the stepper, but that's it. That's the extent of my cardio is 5 minutes on the stepper, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. But I love weight training. And I think partially we get stuck in, oh, we need to do this, when in reality, you need to choose something that works for you, that you're going to be able to commit to.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I think you'll know if it's working for you and if it's helping you reach your goals, like follow it consistently for a certain amount of time and then evaluate. So I think, yes, like finding something that's efficient and effective and enjoyable is key. And then also picking times, like we talked about earlier, that are going to be the least likely to get interrupted. And for most of us moms, unfortunately, it's first thing in the morning. And that's what I hear a lot is people don't want to wake up. And it's like, once you do it and you start to make it a habit, it's honestly like easier to do than not to do. So I would say like those two things going hand in hand, like that's like just it's like a recipe for success. It's magical once you can get those things to work for you and you feel so good when you're done with it, for sure. But yeah, not everybody has to do the same workout, and like there's always these trends, like there was recently like I can't remember, something 3-13-30. I don't even remember what it was. It was like walking on an incline, not holding on the treadmill for 30 minutes at 13 incline, 3 feet. That's what it was. And I was like, it was like this trend going everywhere that like, you'll go this way, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's just another like workout trend. Sure, do it if it sounds fun. Great, work it into your routine. Yeah. But it is not the only way, be all end all for like health or weight loss success, for sure. I think more like you said, the key is finding the things that you enjoy. Yes, it's great to work in resistance training, some type of cardiovascular activity. The balance of those two can be really effective, but that can look like anything. It can also just look like getting a lot of steps in throughout the day, like setting a step goal for yourself. Maybe you're at a certain number, try to double it. Like, so it does not have to be, and I actually made that shift. I used to do a lot of HIIT training, high intensity interval training. I just got to a point where like, just didn't feel good anymore. It just literally didn't feel good to me anymore. I also used to do a lot of heavyweight training, and that just didn't feel great for me anymore. So I kind of shifted more to, now I do a ton of walking, and I love it because I do some at the gym, and then throughout the day I do, and it like gets my creativity going during the day when I'm like kind of feeling like I've been staring at a computer for too long. I can actually come up with content ideas as I walk. I also think of it sometimes as like a moving meditation. So I turn all my electronics off. So many benefits. And now I do more of like lower weight, high repetition strength training, and it's working so well for me. And it's so much easier for me to stick to it And it's easier for me to get myself up to the gym at 5 a.m., when I go, or 5:30 a.m. when I go, because it's like, oh yeah, I'm kind of looking forward to that. So yeah, I think that's so key. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so much easier to stay committed and motivated on something when it's something that you actually enjoy and not dreading. I
Yeah.
used to also do the hit and it worked for a little bit, but then I remember I started like dreading, like I
Mm-hmm.
was forcing myself to do this, and I hate forcing myself to do anything. But like that's what the feeling I was getting versus the routine I am in now. I don't feel like I'm forcing myself. I look forward to going and spending that time just on myself.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to still make sure it's challenging for us. So we're continuing to grow and evolve, but challenging in a good way. Like it doesn't feel awful every
Mhm.
day. So I think that's really important. And then what was the other thing I was going to say? I don't know what left me. And I think maybe it was just that we're not going to be motivated every day. Like that's totally
Mhm.
normal, totally normal. But as
Oh,
long as we have
yes.
that commitment and everything else we talked about earlier on, like you can use that here too. Like thinking about that vision, how am I going to feel when I'm done? Like all of those things
Mhm.
can really drive you to do it. And then also like going back to, those questions we were talking about earlier too, like, so you wake up and you don't feel like going, you're dreading it and all the things. Some things I like to ask myself is, but what do I feel like doing today? What would make this sound better?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's listening to a podcast that I've been waiting for, or, something
Mhm.
new on YouTube, whatever it is, that will actually be like, okay, yeah, you know what? I could go walk and listen to this. And it gets me there. And then I'm in the zone. So
Mhm. Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, listening to podcasts is always one of my favorite things to do on a walk.
Yes. Yes. Me too. Me too.
Yeah. So, how about you talk a little bit more about the services you offer, the people that you really enjoy working with, and if someone does want to work with you, what is the best way of getting in contact with you?
Absolutely. So the best way to get a hold of me is either through any of my social pages, but I'll say Instagram because I'm pretty active on there. And that my handle is at Elena, Elena, Nicole Health. My website is the same. It's elenanicolehealth.com. You can go to either of those. I always do a free strategy session to get started where we literally just talk about
Mm,
where are you at, what are you struggling with, where do you want to go, and start to kind of get a roadmap built out for you to see like
mhm,
what that could actually look like. So regardless of if we continue to working together or not, you leave the call with something. I would love to work with you, but either way you're going to get value out of it. And the women I mainly work with are, we kind of talked about in the beginning, but someone who really wants to create that healthy lifestyle for themselves, that consistent healthy
mhm,
lifestyle, but they're feeling like they're struggling at certain points or just stuck, and they like get to a certain point, they're doing really good. That's what I hear all the time. And then you just kind of fall off
mm,
to something, a life event happens. That we feel like sometimes there's like a circumstance or situation that's outside of our control that is keeping us from getting what we feel like should be in our control, like reaching our goals,
mhm,
losing the weight. That is the person that I absolutely love to help because that was me, and that's been most of my clients. And I have two main ways of working with me, although I'm always customizing things for people. One would be you can do one-on-one sessions. So say we do that strategy session and you're like, okay, I'd love to see like what this looks like, taking to the next step. We can set up another call. Or I have my main signature program which is my Healthy in 10 program. And basically I help you lose, if weight loss is the goal of yours, I help you lose 10 pounds in 10 weeks in a very healthy, sustainable way that you can truly maintain for life. So you're going to learn to build a lot of these skills and learn the tools and strategies we've talked about in today's call. Getting that consistency, getting that momentum. How do we overcome all of the life things? Those are the things you and I are truly going to work on together in that program.
mm,
So you're going to leave it, feeling really confident, really clear in how to reach your health goals, and likely have gotten there already. But the best thing is you can apply those things you're going to learn to all areas of your life: business, relationships, parenting, all of it. So I think did I answer all the questions?
Yes, you did.
Okay,
Awesome.
cool. Perfect. Good,
Yes,
good.
and we will link all of that stuff up on the show notes. So if you're driving, don't worry about trying to write that down.
Yes, and I do, if it's okay for me to
Mhm.
include that as well, is I do have a guide that's all about, it's a free ebook. It's Making Time for Health for Busy Moms. Has a lot of the things we talked about today, some different ways to work in exercise, I think it's like 10 tangible tips that you can take and apply into your own life to make it work with the time that you do have.
Mhm. Perfect. Thank you so much, Elena,
You're welcome.
and for giving us your time. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much for having me.